This video is how to make pinch pot clay gnomes with your students. So the first thing that my students and I are going to do is we probably already had a day where we talked about clay, but the first thing we're going to make after that day of talking about the clay is how to make the sphere out of their lump of clay, because I've rough cut and rolled the clay for them and they're going to make a sphere. And the best way to make a sphere is to not put down the pinch pot, not to put down the clay that's going to become the pinch pot, is to keep it in the air. And we're using this soft, like rounded part of our hand, the palm, and we're rotating the clay. And I tell my students, if they've had experience with snow, I know not all students have had experience with snow, and people that live in other parts of the world have not had experience with snow, but we're packing it tight, we're packing it into the center, we're rotating the clay, and we're packing the clay. We're keeping the clay in the air to make the sphere shape, a 3D circle. And it's never going to be perfect. You can roll it between your hands. You could try to roll it on the table, but you might start to lose pieces of your clay to the placemat. You always want to work on top of a mat. We're just going to use a piece of paper in school, so that way we can roll up all the clay dust into the paper and put it into the garbage. We don't want to breathe any clay dust in. It's not the best thing for our eyes and our nose or our lungs. And that's a pretty good pinch pot, and it didn't take me too long to do. We have a little bit of water. We're just going to smooth out any lumps and bumps or cracking. It doesn't need to be perfect, but the better the sphere, the better the pinch pot. So the next step to making our pinch pot gnome is forming the pinch pot. There are only 3 ways to hand build. One is the slab of clay, or like a pancake of clay. So the slab, pinch pot, and the other is the coil form. So we are going to use the pinch pot to make our gnome. So you're going to pick up your sphere, and we're not going to put it down until the pinch pot is fully formed. So it's going to be all about the thumbs, and the fingers are going to stay on the outside. It's going to be a thumbs party. Only the thumbs are going to create the pinch pot. So we're going to push inward, and then we're going to use straight fingers like a duck's bill, to pinch and turn the clay. We're just going to keep the clay in the air. We stand when we're doing this in class, and we keep it in the air with our hands and fingers pointing upwards. The fingers are pointing up. We don't want to do this because then we're tempted to put it down. And we're just going to keep spinning it in the air. I'm passing it. If you watch slowly, I'm passing it to my other hand and pinching the whole time. So this is what it looks like when I'm going fast. And it's going to form the pinch pot. The pinch pot should look like we chopped a baseball in half, or it should look like a bird's nest. I can't assume students have seen a bird's nest, so we do show it in the day before class. We show a picture of a bird's nest. We show a baseball, even a picture of a baseball cut in half, so we can visualize that this looks like a baseball cut in half, or it looks like a bird's nest on a branch. And then we're pinching and turning. And then we're going to check it for elephant skin, which is any like cracking. And then we're going to just smooth out with the water. The better the pinch pot, the better the clay gnome we're going to make. And this is air dry clay. We do not have a kiln at my school. We have about 300 children that go to school here. We have about up to 24 kids that come to the art room at a time for 40 minutes with 5 minutes in between classes. So there is my pinch pot. What happens when we put the pinch pot down is we start to put our fingers inside, and this is what tends to happen when we put fingers inside the pinch pot, is it starts to look less and less like a pinch pot because the fingers are very strong, and then the thumbs are on the outside. It starts to look less and less like a pinch pot. What also happens is it gets a really heavy bottom and the walls get super thin. If that happens to you, you don't need to be upset. We're just gonna, the clay is very forgiving. We just form it back into a sphere shape, and we just start back at step 1, which is make the sphere. So it's okay if you put the clay down. It just makes it harder, and it's just way easier to let gravity help you make the pinch pot. So just make it back into the sphere. It takes a couple of minutes to get it back, so don't worry if you put your project down. You're going to keep your project in the air. Let the gravity help it fall over your thumbs. It's a thumb party. Only the thumbs can go inside. The fingers have to stay outside. And then you're just going to smooth. And then we're going to start to form the gnome next from the pinch pot. So we're going to turn the pinch pot upside down. So it looks like this. So the opening is down here. And then we're going to start to add onto the pinch pot. So we're going to pinch and pull as a technique. That's its actual name. We're going to pinch and pull up to form the gnome's hat. So I'm going to just grab from the bottom, and I'm just going to scoop and pull very gently and evenly. I'm just going to rotate the clay. And we're going to pinch and pull upwards. Pinch and pull upwards to start to form the clay gnome's hat. I did this in my building with public school children, grade 2. But it could probably also work for older students, such as grade 3. So you're just going to use your thumb, use your fingers, and you're doing this motion to start to form this, like what we called in class, like a Hershey Kiss chocolate candy shape. We can't assume everyone has seen that kind of candy or knows what I'm talking about, so you can pull that picture up on the board to make sure your kids know what you're talking about. And if it gets weak, there's a weak spot, you can just pull that off and just keep pinching and pulling up to make that hat shape however you want your hat to be. And then we're going to smooth this back out. That was easy and successful. And it's okay to restart at the beginning. And we have our little hat shape. And then from here, we're going to mark where the hat ends by carving into the clay with a clay tool. We have a whole plate of tools, all different variety of things that you can use. These are for writing names at the end of the project onto their car seats that they're going to make to take their project home to dry at home. When I said draw on the clay, some kids thought it was literal to draw on the clay, so word choice does matter. And I'm going to just take the edge of this tool and a popsicle stick and start to draw where I want the hat to end, and then where I want the clay gnome's face to start. We do talk about these are house gnomes because this is air dry clay. It can't go outside, but this project would work with kiln dried clay also. So that is my little line for the face. I'm going to put eyes, nose. We're going to use something called scratch to attach, to scratch on the gnome, and we're going to do scoring to make the beard, and we're going to put little shoes on the side. So that's what we're up to next, is taking the tools. Some students chose to use the end of the permanent marker to make the eyes, or where they kind of wanted them to go. If you don't like that, you could take some water and erase it. We also did talk about that slip is clay glue, so it's a little clay and water. It makes clay glue. It makes your attachment pieces stick together. I have them make their own slip really quick because it's just air dry clay, and it's more about process than end product, that they are exposed to clay and would know how to work with clay if they went to a pottery studio, or they start taking more advanced classes where there is a kiln. So I'm going to take a tool to make my clay gnome's eyes. Wonderful. So I kind of have a plan where I kind of want his nose to go, is about here, or hers. And then I have clay that's for attachments in the center of the table. Some kids made pointy noses or cone shapes. Whatever shape your student likes is probably going to be amazing. I really like these little toothpicks that are pointy, or yarn needles would also work if you wanted to reuse them again and again. These only last so long. So we're going to do something called scratching to attach. So you can't just take two pieces of clay and push the two pieces of clay together. They'll look like they're stuck together temporarily, but then the two things will fall off. So you need to scratch to attach the pieces. So we're scratching in two different directions. This is called scoring. And then we drip the little clay glue, which is the slip here, in between the pieces to make them fuse together. So I want this nose to stick to the outside of the pinch pot. So I'm going to scratch like cat claws. We say cool kids use hashtags as a little way to get the kids to remember to use their hashtag symbols. Some kids do know what hashtags are, some kids don't. We take the clay glue, the slip, which is clay plus water, put that in there, and then we're going to push the nose on there, and then we're going to smooth it out. And what the scratching to attach does is it creates a locking mechanism, and the clay kind of locks together as it dries and is more likely to bond. And so there we have the little beginning of our Hershey Kiss little shaped gnome. I'm going to draw on the beard with a tool. I'm still using my pointy preferred toothpick. There's my little beard. You can draw eyelashes or eyebrows or any other details that kids want with the tool. And now we're going to attach shoes to our little gnome. We take the clay, we're going to roll the shoes from our attachment clay. Take some water, smooth it around the edge of the sphere. Water, just make sure you get rid of all the elephant skin if you don't like the way that looks. And then we're going to put the little shoes that are kind of peeking out from underneath our little gnome's beard. We're going to put them here. Scratch in two different directions. Cat claws or cool kids use hashtags works really well as a little saying to get kids to remember. Repetition, repetition, repetition. We're going to take those little spheres, our little shoes. Water, which is clay glue because we put clay in it. And we're going to press it together. I'm holding from the inside so I don't wreck the shape of the gnome. Same thing with this shoe. You don't have to do shoes if you don't want to. Clay glue goes in between the scratches. And we're going to stand our little gnome up. And there we go. There you have it. You have a cute, easy, we did this in 40 minutes in class. We did do a day, one class period before where we talked about clay and everything about the project and the directions. And then day 2, we just spent all 40 minutes of the class doing the project. There's 2 different ways I sent these home. One was to make a spaceship for their clay gnome to live in, to go home. Their name goes on the outside, their class code. And then I stapled this shut. When they take it home, they take this off, they slide it underneath, and they let their clay gnome air dry at home. He's more likely to make it all the way home. If I drop this on the way home, the clay gnome will still survive because it's wet. So we have less likely that the project won't make it all the way home for their families to see. And then it can air dry for 7 days at home. And then they can paint it at home after 7 days. Or we made also car seats instead of spaceships. These are just smaller bowls that I had. Put the little gnome inside. It also gives like parameters for how big the gnome can be. The clay ball is about the same size as students' fists. That also prevents them from getting too big for your materials. We wrote our names on the bag. Art teacher Maven. And then we opened up the bag and made our little car seat. If kids couldn't get it in, they could rip one side of the Ziploc bag. And we slide them in. And this is also a way that kids took home their project. Then when they get it home, they can carry it home on the bus like this. They can fix anything that needs to be fixed when they get it home. If something happened to the shape of the Hershey Kiss shape of the hat, they can still fix it at home with a little bit of water. So I like sending them home like this instead of all the way dry, because a lot of them don't make it home. So this is just an easier way they can fix anything and then leave it to dry. And it is adorable and fun, and the kids really enjoyed making their own house gnome. It would definitely be a better long-lasting project with kiln dried clay, but this is what we have, so we're going to work with what we have. And I hope that this helped you bring air dried clay to your students, and that it made it more accessible for you as a teacher, and that we were able to do this in 40 minutes with learning about attachments and lots of vocabulary words. And we also discussed clay the day before. Okay, hope that helps.